Socrates, Athens, 470/469 BC. Athens, 399 BC, is a central figure in the history of Western philosophy. Despite leaving no written works, his ideas have reached us through Plato's dialogues and Xenophon's writings. The Socratic method, irony and maeutics. Socrates is renowned for his teaching method, which involved continuous dialogue with his interlocutors. This approach, called maeutics from the profession of his mother, a midwife, aimed to uncover hidden truths within individuals through a series of questions. Socratic irony. Socrates often pretended ignorance to encourage his interlocutors to articulate their ideas. Maeutics. By asking increasingly precise questions, Socrates guided his interlocutors toward a deeper understanding of the concept under examination. The concept of Socratic irony. Socratic irony is a dialectical technique in which Socrates feigned ignorance to draw out his interlocutors' ideas. By asking seemingly naive questions, he led others to contradict themselves or reveal inconsistencies in their thinking. Functions of Socratic irony. Stimulating reflection. Irony compelled the interlocutor to question their certainties and seek a deeper understanding. Exposing ignorance. Socrates used irony to highlight his interlocutor's ignorance, encouraging a shared search for truth. Defending against accusations. By pretending ignorance, Socrates shielded himself from accusations of sophistry or heresy. Socratic maeutics. Maeutics is the philosophical method of Socrates, often compared to the art of midwifery, from the Greek maieuteik, meaning art of the midwife. How maeutics works. Socratic irony. Socrates began dialogues by feigning ignorance, asking seemingly innocent questions to stimulate the interlocutor to present their ideas. Questions. Through increasingly precise queries, Socrates led his interlocutors to question their assumptions, identify contradictions, and recognize their ignorance. Discovery of truth. The ultimate goal of maeutics was to enable the interlocutor to discover the truth independently through self-exploration. Why maeutics is important. Self-knowledge. Maeutics fosters profound self-awareness and understanding of one's limits. A critical thinking. The Socratic method promotes the development of analytical and evaluative skills. Truth-seeking. Maeutics represents a continual search for truth, engaging all participants actively. Comparison between maeutics and traditional teaching methods. Application of maeutics in daily life. Although born in a philosophical context, maeutics can be applied in various areas of everyday life. Education stimulates critical thinking and meaningful learning. Interpersonal relationships helps resolve conflicts and build deeper connections. Personal development encourages self-exploration and growth. Practical examples. In discussions, pose questions to better understand others' perspectives rather than asserting one's own opinions dogmatically. Problem solving. Analyze issues from multiple angles by questioning what is known and unknown. Decision making. Evaluate options critically by reflecting on their alignment with one's values. Criticisms of maeutics. Limited effectiveness. Some argue it works only with highly motivated individuals. Time intensive. It requires patience and is not suited for rapid knowledge acquisition. Relativism. Critics argue it lacks objective criteria for truth. Despite these limitations, maeutics remains a powerful method for fostering self-discovery and critical thinking. The trial and death of Socrates. Socrates was accused of impiety and corrupting the youth. Condemned to death, he drank hemlock calmly, exemplifying his adherence to principles. Reasons for his condemnation. Envy. Many envied his influence and ability to expose ignorance. Fear. His critique of societal norms was seen as a threat to the Athenian establishment. Misinterpretation. His ideas were often misunderstood and misrepresented. Socrates versus the Sophists. While contemporaries, Socrates and the Sophists held opposing views. Key differences. Purpose. Sophists pursued rhetoric for political and social success, while Socrates sought self-knowledge and truth. Method. Sophists used dialectics for persuasion. Socrates used maeutics for constructive dialogue. Truth. Sophists embraced relativism, whereas Socrates believed in absolute truths. Socrates' influence on Plato. Plato, a disciple of Socrates, immortalized his teacher in dialogues and developed his own philosophical system. Theory of ideas. Plato expanded Socratic thought into a metaphysical framework of perfect forms. The Republic, a vision of a just society governed by philosophers, inspired by Socratic ethics. Dialectics. Refine the Socratic method into a systematic tool for philosophical inquiry. The legacy of Socrates. Socrates' dialectical method, ethical focus, and pursuit of truth have shaped Western philosophy profoundly, influencing thinkers from Plato to the modern era. Socrates remains an enduring symbol of wisdom, integrity, and the unyielding quest for knowledge. Socrates' aporias, as presented by Plato. Socrates' aporias, closely tied to the Socratic method, are one of the most distinctive features of the Athenian philosophers' thought. Through Plato's dialogues, these moments of intellectual impasse are explored and developed, serving as essential tools to investigate the nature of knowledge, virtue, and truth. What is an aporia? Aporia, from the Greek paiomikron roalpha, aporia, means lack of a way or insurmountable difficulty. It refers to a state of doubt or confusion that arises during an inquiry when a definitive solution cannot be reached. For Socrates, aporia does not represent failure, but rather a critical moment of reflection in which recognizing one's ignorance becomes the starting point for the pursuit of knowledge. Aporias in Plato's dialogues. The Laches. What is courage? In the Laches, Socrates discusses the nature of courage with two generals. Despite the various definitions offered, such as the endurance of the soul or the ability to face danger, all are refuted by Socrates, leaving the participants in a state of aporia. This illustrates the difficulty of defining a moral concept in universal terms. The Euthyphro. What is piety? In the Euthyphro, Socrates asks his interlocutor to define piety. Euthyphro's answers are consistently challenged, revealing contradictions or logical shortcomings. The dialogue ends without a clear definition, highlighting the complexity of the concept and the importance of critical reasoning. The Meno. Is virtue teachable? In the Meno, Socrates explores whether virtue can be taught. Through a series of questions and answers, the discussion reaches an aporetic conclusion. It is unclear whether virtue is a form of knowledge and therefore teachable, or a divine gift. Nevertheless, the dialogue also introduces the theory of recollection, opening new philosophical avenues. The Charmides. What is temperance? In this dialogue, Socrates examines the concept of temperance, addressing it as self-control and self-awareness. However, all definitions provided are rejected, leaving the participants in a state of aporia, which underscores the difficulty of defining abstract virtues. The function of aporia. Stimulating critical thinking, aporia compels the interlocutor to recognize their ignorance and question their assumptions. Fostering dialogue. The lack of a definitive solution encourages continued exploration through discussion and exchange. Preparing for knowledge. Aporia serves as the starting point for deeper understanding, as it reveals the need for further investigation. The Socratic legacy of aporia. The aporias in Plato's dialogues are not merely sources of confusion, but invitations to transcend conventional thinking and pursue a deeper understanding. This approach would influence not only later philosophy, but also educational methods grounded in critical inquiry and rational debate. Conclusion. Socrates' aporias, as transmitted through Plato's dialogues, are essential tools for understanding the complexity of reality and inspiring an unending philosophical quest. Lysippos Socrates, an iconic portrait. Lysippos, one of the greatest Greek sculptors of the 4th century BCE, left an indelible mark on the collective imagination with his numerous depictions of Socrates. His sculptures helped establish a precise iconography of the philosopher, which has been reinterpreted over the centuries. The Herm of Socrates. One of the most famous portraits of Socrates is the Herm. This is a bust without arms, mounted on a pillar-shaped support. The Socrates Herm attributed to Lysippos is characterized by extraordinary realism. The face is marked with wrinkles, The gaze is deep and thoughtful, and the beard is thick and untamed. Socrates' Herm by Lysippos, Capitoline Museums. This representation contributed to the stereotypical image of the philosopher as a wise old man, introspective and detached from worldly affairs. Characteristics of Lysippos sculptures. Lysippos sculptures stand out for naturalism. Lysippos sought to depict reality more naturally and dynamically compared to his predecessors. Ideal proportions. The artist introduced new proportions, making figures leaner and more elongated. Portraiture. Lysippos is regarded as the founder of psychological portraiture, capturing the inner essence of his subjects. The influence of Lysippos on Socrates' depictions. Lysippos sculptures profoundly influenced later representations of Socrates. The image of the philosopher as a wise old man, with a flowing beard and a thoughtful gaze, became a cultural icon, reproduced countless times in painting, sculpture, and literature. Why was Socrates so often represented? Symbolic figure. Socrates is a central figure in the history of philosophy, and his image became a symbol of wisdom and the pursuit of truth. Model of virtue. Socrates was regarded as a model of virtue and wisdom, and his artistic representation helped reinforce this ideal. Conclusion. Lysippos sculptures helped establish an iconic image of Socrates that has endured through the ages. The Socrates Herm, in particular, has become a cultural icon, universally representing the figure of the philosopher.